Welcome ladies and gents, Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter, or of course you can subscribe to the channel. Let's talk boxing. What a phenomenal performance from Naoya Inoue, stopping Stephen Fulton inside 8 rounds and in my opinion establishing himself as the #1 pound for pound fighter in the world. I also have to give major props though to Stephen Fulton because he was dogged in there, and a lot of people interpret dogged to mean you took your licks and you didn't take a knee and stuff like that. That's part of it. But being dogged to me also implies a willingness to pursue victory, and he made offensive adjustments, and we're going to discuss all this when we talk about the technical elements of how this played out, in order to try and win. And you know, the Spartans, I've mentioned this in the past on my channel, when they had the phrase return with your shield or on it, in other words carrying your shield as a victorious combatant, or when they would die they would be placed on their shields, put on a horse and sent back for a burial in Sparta, and if they had an arrow in the back it would suggest that they turned to run away, and that cowardice meant that they were not allowed to be buried. They were not given a burial. So it wasn't victory that was demanded by the Spartans, it was the concept of giving your utmost in pursuit of victory, even if it meant you fell. And as a result, that's where you get the phrase from today, he went out on his shield. And that's exactly what Stephen Fulton did. He could have gone into survival mode, said, you know what, I'm going to try and last the 12 rounds as some sort of moral victory. He didn't. He made offensive adjustments, and in the end he got stopped. But that's a warrior, that's the mindset of a champion. So I take my hat off to him, metaphorically, not literally, because the haircut underneath this hat is atrocious. I can't leave the house without a hat on at the moment. I need to get, in fact I'm going to show you lot. Shall I? Yeah, I'm going to show you. You ready? Okay, here goes. I can't believe I'm going to get the barnet out. Look at that. Imagine they saw me walking in Clissold Park with this haircut. You're going to start seeing reports of Bigfoot on the nightly news tonight. But let's get back to the fight and talk boxing. Now, before we get into the technical aspects of the fight and break it down, let me just quickly go back to the hand wrap issue, which caused so many problems in the build-up to the fight. If you've yet to see my preview, the first few minutes, I think it's 3 minutes something, explain this in a fair way, and it explains what stacking is and what it does, where it's recognized as legal, where it's not, and so on and so forth. As you can see from this particular video in the build up to the fight, there was no issue here. Stephen Fulton's team got their way. So the gauze is applied prior to the tape. That's the gauze going on now, and here you're about to see tape starting to be applied. So nothing untowards going on. There's a representative from Team Fulton. The power was real, the power was natural. There's no accusations of anything illegal going on. In the first 3 rounds, it became apparent that it was very one-sided as a fight. In fact, to be honest with you, within the first 30 seconds, I knew it was not going to be a good night for Stephen Fulton. I personally felt, as I explained in the preview, that there were areas he could potentially cause Naoya Inoue some real problems in, and I thought it would be a lot more competitive than it was. And those areas I felt could be whereby he's got really good feet and he's longer than Inoue. So I felt he could potentially use a stab jab, move around the ring and popping that jab, like I said, into the solar plexus to stop those entries, and then switching it up by changing the level, pushing off of that back foot, getting really close to Inoue, tying him up, nullifying him up close and keeping it long and frustrating Inoue. Instead, he came out with quite a wide stance and he lowered himself so that he was almost the height of Inoue, and he's put out a long reaching jab from there. It's very much a Virgil Hunter type of approach. He really likes this sort of approach, and it does offer a real obstacle. You have to bypass that lead leg, you have to bypass that lead arm, and because you're low, you're also not open to a guy sort of dipping down and throwing over the top right hand because you're not tall enough for that. So he's trying to take away the angles or opportunities for the superior foot speed of Inoue. Nonetheless, as we explained, he's got such a terrific jab and his feet are so good, his balance is so good. He was able to be entering the pocket so quickly, and as I explained in the preview, when I'm watching him on the pads and he's moving around the ring, he's circling the ring and then he stops to jab, every single time I will spot the moment he plants his feet, and that looks like a tell from an outsider observing in, but when you're in the ring facing him, it's so difficult to read him because of the linear progression of his shots. He pushes off of the back foot and he's got this piston-like jab. So it's not the sort of jab where you're going to see him raise the shoulder to throw it, okay? It's not the sort of jab whereby you're going to see real movement where he's going to come down to launch off it. It's such a linear progression that you almost don't realize he's coming close, and he's so fast with it, it makes him so hard to time. And his power is carry into this division as well. He was the one using the stab jab to the solar plexus predominantly against Stephen Fulton rather than the other way around. And because of that wide stance of Fulton, he was unable to really step back quickly. He didn't have the narrow feet in order to be able to step back quickly, because although his stance was wide, his weight seemed fairly evenly distributed. He wasn't leaning on that back foot, so he could push back a bit further and come back with a counter. And it just looked to me that the tactical choices early on were a little bit wrong from Fulton, and he was just in a position where the superior technical skill set and really the fast twitch muscles of Inoue, what an athlete he is, were just too much early on for Fulton, and it did not look good. From round 4, he started to make an adjustment, and he started to throw a double jab. And that meant that Inoue's little micro movements with his feet, those little shifts to create more space, he was getting a bit closer to him. And I'm thinking, okay, now he's starting to show a little bit more of a willingness to put his hands together. He's almost settled. He's forgotten about those nerves, so to speak. And as the fight progressed, he started to show more and more ambition. He started to throw a jab, right hand jab. And that meant that he was able to follow Inoue out more effectively. And there were a couple of occasions where he was catching him on his exit. But even then, it was sporadic. Inoue was still able to come back with something of his own. And where he did a lot better than I expected Inoue was on the inside. He was able to tie up Fulton pretty well to stop Fulton from working inside. But that was when Fulton was seeking to initiate the clinch and work from the inside. When he was simply looking to collapse the pocket to get close and work from there rather than tie up, and Inoue was able to stop him from working out of a clinch, in other words, you saw that Inoue's short hands meant that he had the ability to have full rotation within the pocket at inner mid-range before Fulton was able to let go of his hands. So it was really a mismatch at distance, it was a mismatch at mid-range, and it was a mismatch up close. It was just a superb performance. You then saw him at points, Fulton, start to read the jab a little bit. And he started to throw the right hand over the top of it. And we did explain in the preview that because of Inoue's tendency to jab and line up with the backhand of an orthodox fighter, that could potentially be a shot that was on for Fulton. And he started to land it on a few occasions. And he buzzed him as well at one point. And he threw a right hand immediately after that as well. So it showed, like I said, a willingness to run to the fire, run into the smoke. And that's what I respected massively about Fulton. But the more chances he took, the more he was getting clipped with some big shots. And you saw, like I said, the misdirection of Inoue, being able to land every punch in the book. The left hook to the body, the left hook to the head, right hand down the pipe, beautiful stab jab to the belly, wonderful jab that splits the guard, that he'd throw it as an up jab or he'd throw it straight. And those little movements, his distance control, his balance underneath him, it is just superb to behold, man. You get a lot of punchers in the sport who fall in love with their power, and so they don't develop skill set. And I've spoken about this before on the channel. So for instance, imagine you're developing and you're learning your craft, and you are struggling with a guy who's jabbing you and giving you angles, and you are a big power puncher, and you're 2, 3, 4 rounds in and you're frustrated a little bit, kind of like what Gerald Washington was doing to Deontay Wilder, for argument's sake. You're frustrated a little bit. Are you going to sit there as a puncher and start to figure out, how am I going to outbox this guy? Or are you going to say, you know what, I'm going to start letting my hands go and I'm going to catch him with something and I'm taking his head off? And you do that, and you do it once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. And all of a sudden you think that's what you can always do to get a guy out of there. You never develop the puzzle solving or the skill set to be able to deal with the process of dealing with a really good technical boxer. Inoue doesn't do that. He is a boxer. If Inoue's power tops out at some point, he's still going to be very hard to beat because he's such a good technical fighter that's fast. And so to marry all of that together, it really is a thing of beauty, man. It's wonderful to behold. And just to reinforce what I was saying in the preview, how he is a chess playing monster, and he will throw certain punches to set up follow-up attacks. He will get you to react to big shots in order to bring something else into play, or he'll use throwaway shots or misdirection. Well, that stab jab to the pit of the stomach and the solar plexus was causing havoc to Stephen Fulton the whole night, and that's how the knockout was set up. You can see here, he throws that jab into the pit of the stomach. It causes Fulton to freeze up ever so slightly and bend forward ever so slightly. The right hand follows. That's what sends Fulton into a state of disarray. Then the left hook goes and ends the fight. So he's got a very high IQ. This is not just a man who's looking to blow you out with power. He's so much more than that. In terms of the pound for pound list, look, this was the 4th weight category that he's won a world title in. He skipped 1 weight category, so it's actually the 5th he's competed in. So he's operating against guys that are a lot bigger than him. Now, because in the lower weight classes, the jump between the divisions is smaller, And it's more common in some ways for guys to go through weight classes in the smaller weight categories or the mid-range sort of weight categories than it is in the higher weight categories. So Alexander Usyk, for instance, became the undisputed cruiserweight champion of the world, and he's the unified heavyweight champion of the world. That's historic, right? A lot of people, for instance, Hatman, believe that Usyk is the greatest cruiserweight of all time. Some people feel it's Holyfield, but you're not going to get too many others that go into that conversation. In other words, what Usyk's doing is historic, whereas what Inoue's doing is historic too, but you do see fighters go through weight categories more consistently. Ioka's another example coming out of Japan, for instance. We know Manny Pacquiao went through so many, Floyd Mayweather. It's different when you're in the lower weight categories. So which is a greater achievement? I'll leave that to you to decide, but the reason I have Inoue at number 1 at the moment is because of the dominance of the display. Usyk was fantastic, superb against Anthony Joshua. I felt he won both fights 8 rounds to 4. But what you saw today was a fight billed by many to be 50-50. He dominated every single aspect against a very good champion at a much bigger weight category than where he started off, and he battered him and stopped him inside 8 rounds. That is something special that we're observing here, guys. So for me, he has to be at the top of the pile. Terence Crawford, of course, is the other one that's in the conversation. If he goes and does something spectacular against Errol Spence, it will be his 3rd weight category, and he would become undisputed in the 2nd weight category there. Inoue still has one more guy to beat if he wants to become undisputed in this weight category to make him 2-time undisputed champion. So that's going to cause some debate. I'll leave it to you guys to decide in the comment section down below who you consider to be your top 3 in order. Let me know. In addition to that, I also want to quickly say KANAMU SAKAMA's performance I thought was superb. I thought the commentary team were a little bit harsh on him. They were missing a lot of the stuff that he was doing. What a quality prospect, 20 years old. In fact, I'm going to do a prospect watch video on this guy because he's somebody that I really want to keep an eye on. Talk about some of the things that I feel he needs to work on. He's not the perfect fighter. It was his 8th fight. He's 20 years old, like I said. 7 of them coming by way of knockout. And Horikawa, although his record is not great, as Asian Boxing pointed out to me on Twitter, it's misleading because he's got, you know, some good fighters on that record. So for SAKAMA to do what he did in the way that he did it, I really enjoyed some of the things he was doing, the subtleties of his method of operation. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. Thanks for watching. Take care. God bless.